Animations inside of Unreal Engine consist of different assets and systems working together to bring your work to life. Let's take a look at some of the more commonly used ones. The first thing we need to know is what is the difference between a skeletal and a static mesh? If we go into our browser, we go to Geometry Meshes, and we open up this cube, this is a static mesh. It has no skeletal system. Skeletal animation will not work on it. It's just stuff we can see on the screen, vertices, materials, and such. If we go into our mannequin mesh folder and look at our SK mannequin, this is our skeletal mesh. It has a skeleton assigned to it. We can see it on the left. We can go to character, bones, all, and we can see our skeleton underline that mesh. And our animations that we create externally and bring in allow us to modify in real time this mesh to give us our animations. So that's important to note. Skeletal meshes for skeletal animation is what we're going to be looking at in this course. Now let's look at our actual animations and some of the more common assets. If we go down to Content, Mannequin, Animations, we have some assets we're going to focus on. Let's start on this third-person idle and open it up. We can see that we have an animation playing in the viewport here. It's an idle animation using skeletal animation on the skeletal mesh, playing back that we can see right here in our little progress bar. I'm going to go ahead and go to Character, Bones, and None so we can't see our bones. That way we just have our animation. This is our animation sequence. It is what happens when we create an animation in an external program. We bring it in, we import it, Unreal Engine converts it, does what it needs to do, and turns it into an animation sequence. That animation sequence is tied to the skeleton, and it plays it back on whatever mesh we've chosen. Next, we have our animation blueprint. Animation sequences are good, but they're one thing. It's an idle, it's a run. We can't really do more than one thing easily without just saying, hey, the minute you start moving, go ahead and do this or do this. With animation blueprints, we can apply logic to the animation system. We can say, hey, how fast are you going? Based on how fast you're going, go ahead and do this. Are you jumping? Are you reloading? Maybe you've died and need to play a death animation. So the animation blueprint can handle all of that. Using an event graph, it can take information into the animation graph or take information out of the animation graph and send it to something else. And then using the anim graph, we can take that information, those values, and determine what we should be doing using something like a state machine that you can see here. Lastly, we have a blend space. The blend space, which we can see here, third person idle run 2D, allows us to easily and smoothly transition from one animation to another. If I click on this little green triangle, this green diamond, and drag it, we can see our character on the top going from an idle to a walk to a run smoothly based on where this diamond is. And this diamond is just a value. It's a number that I'm going to give it. And it's going to determine where it falls and what animation should be played. And you can see a nice little smooth transition. There are, of course, additional assets. If we right click in our content browser and go to animation, we can see a list of more. We're not going to be covering these, but some of the more useful ones are things like aim offsets, maybe adjusting just the top half of your body, aiming at a certain location. Animation montages, we can link together different animations and add some looping and call them at certain times. They're really good for things like maybe a combo attack. And then you have stuff like level sequence and template sequence, where we can record animations inside the engine and play them back using Sequencer. Now, one thing to note, your skeletal mesh. So if we go to third-person blueprints, open up our third-person character, we're going to go to our mesh component here. This is our skeletal mesh component. And we're going to look at the animation tab under animation mode. This determines how we are going to be playing back animation. So what are we going to be doing? Are we going to be using an animation blueprint? Are we going to be playing back a specific animation asset? Or do we maybe have some custom code that we can use some methods and events and overrides in order to drive our animation? For our examples today, we're going to be using the animation blueprint so we can get some more dynamic animation at runtime.